Our first speaker is Livnat, Dr. Livnat Decleve is a political anthropologist. She's currently affiliated with the University of Edinburgh as a British Academy International Fellow. Her PhD dissertation through Tel Aviv University looked at perceptions of political action and sovereignty among Israeli Jewish left-wing activists who've left Israel for political reasons or moved abroad or to Palestinian localities in the West Bank. And her current research delves into alternative political imaginations of Jewish left-wing activists working in Israel, Palestine, and abroad. Please welcome Livnat.
Thank you. So thank you all, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me. I think those are times when each such opportunity must be taken with two hands, and this is part of what I will say, that we have to take every opportunity to speak up and say what things are, talk about what is happening in my society. So the things that I will say are based on my research, but also participation with different groups of activists and different political groups in Israel, Palestine, and abroad. And it's curious enough that the first project that I will talk about was a project that stemmed from the sense of not being able to change history. So I looked into the experiences of Israeli Jewish activists who left Israel because of their dissent, because they did not agree with Israel's policy, with apartheid, with occupation, ethnic cleansing that Israel was doing, and which they not only opposed to, but were active part of the resistance against it, and felt disillusioned with the possibility of making any change in Israel, and at the same time were unable to stay and live in Israel for reasons that I will state in a minute, but they could not be complicit with Israel, and that's why they moved. So they either moved abroad, mainly to North America and Europe, or some of them, very few, moved into Palestinian localities in the West Bank, thinking that those are the places where they would be able to enhance their political activity. And also because of the lived discrepancy between being in the West Bank as activists and then going back to Israel and enjoying all the privileges of being a Jew in Israel, living in Tel Aviv or wherever, enjoying all the rights that Israeli Jews have, knowing that everything that you have, whether possessions, but also even the possibility of enjoying the sea, or the possibility of movement, or having healthcare, etc., is or a sense of security, like being at night in the streets, is produced or be enabled due to the occupation and the segregation and incarceration of Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, and not giving them any rights. So that was one of the reasons why, from this feeling of like despair and disenchantment with the possibility of even approaching, like someone asked in the previous panel about the possibility of addressing Jewish family and other Israeli relatives. So those activists felt like they could not talk to other people. They were not able to share anything with their colleagues, with their family, with their friends. They felt alienated from their own society. and everything surrounding them, even in the sense of, in a very sensory way, like feeling like you're breathing injustice, that it becomes part of you, that the violence that dominates the public space also become part of you and the way that you behave. Although you don't want to be part of it, it becomes part of you. So those were the reasons why people left Israel. They felt like they had no echo and no one heard them. And some of them, so very few, moved to Palestinian localities in solidarity with Palestinians to work in Palestinian-led political engagements. So having done this project with, that really accumulates into a feeling of despair and impossibility of making any change within the Israeli society, I wanted to, the project that I'm doing now, I wanted it to be about people who are trying to imagine something else, that are doing that in Israel, Palestine, but also abroad. So I'm looking into groups that are very progressive, but also very small and unknown groups that are trying to find, to think about political alternatives that go beyond statehood, that are not state-laden, that see Israel-Palestine as part of the Middle East in general, and that are trying to develop new visions of alternatives that are maybe not tangible, that are not feasible even, that no political party would embrace, but still there is an importance to this process, and this is what I want to talk about amongst other things. What I would like to, the message that I want to convey in very short is that when we think about changing history, we have to think about change as part of many, it's not only the grassroots efforts, it's also the political, economical, international context in which those activities are being done. And we also have to think about different audiences that we want to address, whether it's the Israeli audience, and I, for one, have not given up on the society from which I come from, despite all the difficulties, and or if it's the international community or the Jewish communities in the diaspora. So I would like to divide my contribution into two parts, like how do grassroots political or initiatives can address the public in Israel, and how they can make some change abroad. And at the end I will talk about political imagination and why I think that even though it's really far out there, it's still important. It's an important activity and an important thing to do. So in Israel, Palestine, I just come from a visit to my family, to my kids that are living in Haifa and in the region of Haifa. And you know, the day that I've only been away from Israel for 6 months, and despite that, I felt like when I landed into a memorial site, that people are unable to see anything but the events of October 7th. They are unable to see what they are doing, what the violence and the horrors that they are perpetrating on others. They are really consumed by death and mourning, and are unable to think of anything else or see anything else that they really have. I've been to a few family reunions and events, and people addressed me as someone who is out there. If I'm not afraid of anti-Semitism in Scotland or in the UK, if I feel like the Israeli narrative is being heard, so their perception is that no one hears them, no one hears their side. And it's like, when you look at Israeli politics also, Israel has been doing everything to alienate itself from the international community. But this always under the pretext of the world doesn't see us, the world doesn't want to hear us, there is also always anti-Semitism and so on. And people buy that. And in their grief, they are, this is the only perspective that they see. And yet, as there are some very radical young activists that are working in Israel, Palestine, despite the fact that their work is almost illegal in some ways. And I think if the question is how can we change history, one of the most important answers would be to be there. So the fact that there are Israeli Jews who are against what Israel is doing, and even if they are a small minority, but they represent the fact that if we look at things from an historical perspective, when in the future, when we will look back, we will see that there was always a possibility for people to see right, to see what is happening, to look at events straight and to see the injustice that is being done, to see genocide for what it is and not call it war, to acknowledge the fact that horrible things are being done and being justified by October 7th. So this mourning is turning into a monster of atrocities that the Israelis are perpetrating. And I think to go back to things that Naima said in her previous, in the previous panel, when the day after, we are always talking about the day after, when the day after comes, and another solution would come, and people would see the horror that they have committed. Those are the people that will stay on the ground, and we must always be in dialogue with them. We must always try to talk with them. I don't agree that we have to, that they are a lost cause, because it's true, they don't understand what we are saying. They disagree, and it brings a lot of tension, and it's very hard to talk to family about political issues that they feel so strongly about, and we all pay prices for that. But I think we should never stop talking to our people. We should never stop talking and telling them what we see, our perspective, what our encounters with Palestinians, the way we see the world, because those are the people that on the day after they will be on the ground, and they will have to be part of the solution, whatever solution that would be. And this is also part of the things that I've learned from my research. It's the process that people have to go through when they become anti-Zionist. So being an anti-Zionist, I think we've had this conversation already with ICAHD, is a process. It's like a life project. You never become, and that's it. It's a process that I, for once, think that I will do for the rest of my life. Like hearing some of Naima's things was hard for me because she was talking about slapping the face of people that I know. I know people who were murdered during October 7th. My children are now living in Israel. So those people that Palestinians think of as occupiers, land stealers, and so on, are people that I know personally. And so, you know, learning about the Palestinian point of view, and we were talking about that in the lunch break, is something that we would have to do for the rest of our lives. Like it's something, wow, so quickly. So I will cut to the point. So talking to other Israelis is always important, and there are young people that are willing and that can open their eyes to those contents and can do the same journey that we anti-Zionists have done, because all the anti-Zionist Jews that I know were Zionists before. So we've all done this trip. Yes, we've all been on this journey, and others can join us. So that's one thing. And abroad, so since October 7th, what I saw as an activist and a scholar is a big rise in initiatives amongst Jews abroad. And there are many, many initiatives. JVP, for example, is growing like big time. I think that they grew 20% in the first 2 months after October 7th. So people are joining and creating new initiatives and creating new alliances, global alliances, and they are trying to put a lot of pressure on the governments in the respective localities in which they are living. So in abroad, in international forces, and BDS also is becoming the language of BDS and things that the BNC is trying to implement is becoming more and more known, and people are using those, the website, their instructions of BDS and so on. And I think this is something that we also have to emphasize, that the world is changing. And if I want to go back to political imagination and why is that important, is that if we look at what the settlers have gained, right? They had like this vision of the great Israel, which go beyond not only between the river and the sea, but they have like this map of great Israel that includes parts of Arabi Saudi, parts of Lebanon, Gaza for sure, and parts of Syria. Like they have a big expansion program, and they used October 7th as a window to implement their vision. So there's a horrible vision that seemed crazy, that only a few would hold, but they managed to implement their people to the right places in Israel, in decision-making platforms to make this vision a reality. And so the future is a place where it's a place of battle. We have to win this battle of the future, like the vision of the future, and therefore it's very important to have different visions, other visions for a more equal and just future, so that when the right moment happens to us, like for people that hold this vision, we would be able to execute our plans or to bring them forth. And those visions are it's impossible to implement them without the help of the international community and the international players. So, and this is where all of you come into play as well, because there is an importance to putting pressure on governments abroad. So that's.
Thank you, Livnat, very much. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your experience. We applaud your courage and your conviction, so thank you.